Football Outsiders Monday live stream. I am Aaron Schatz, editor-in-chief of Football Outsiders, and we are broadcasting right now on YouTube, Twitch, Twitter, and Facebook. This is our regular weekday live stream every day at 1 o'clock Eastern. If you are watching us, please make sure to ask comments in the chat live. And if you are on YouTube or Twitch, please like and subscribe to the show. We're also available after the fact on the Football Outsiders Podcast Network, so make sure to subscribe to the show on your favorite podcast app and give us a 5-star review so more people can find our shows. Big news, if you haven't heard during our other shows, FO Plus is now on sale for just 99 cents a week for annual subscriptions. It's a limited time offer. It gets you all of our stats, analysis, fantasy research data, and betting information. Don't miss out on the limited time offer, 99 cents a week. You can access on footballoutsiders.com/subscribe or through the link in the description of this show. Ian O'Connor is my guest, as he often is on Mondays from EdjSports. Ian O'Connor is here to talk about big coaching decisions and big win probability moves in Week 9, the crazy week of upsets. What do you think, Ian?
It was exciting day. It seems like the last couple of weeks, or at least the week before last, it was kind of a boring game or boring Sunday. Wasn't a whole lot of action. And this week, it seemed like I was moving nonstop, running the model for a lot of good fourth down decisions this week. It seemed like, early there were a handful of them, and they just kept on rolling in throughout the day, and a bunch of swings, overtime game, comebacks, So we had a little bit of everything. A lot of one big thing that stood out to me where there were 4 pick sixes yesterday, which were all pretty cool. Seeing a couple of them happened, pretty close to each other. But defenses came up big in some games yesterday too.
The biggest game of the day, probably the Titans at the Rams in Sunday Night Football. Big win for the Titans without Derrick Henry, although their offense was not good in this game. They only had 3.5 yards per play. That's bad. But Matthew Stafford basically handed them the game with 2 picks. Tell me about the win probability change of those 2 interceptions.
Yeah, like you mentioned, the Titans offense not good. Seems like all their games have been ugly, but they just somehow find a way to win close games. But yeah, Stafford, 2 picks in this game. One of them was a Wentzian interception, if you will, from his own end zone, just kind of flinging it forward, trying to avoid a safety, which I forget who the rules analyst is on Sunday night, but said it actually would not have been a safety because the ball was actually outside of the
Oh, I'm thinking Gene Steratore, but I think he's CBS. So
that's right. Is it Terry McCauley? I think is the Sunday night.
Yep.
That's it. Yeah, said that the ball actually was outside. Hard to tell when you're Stafford. You just avoid it, but the interception, and then Titans got the ball at the 1 or 2 yard line. I think ended up scoring in the very next possession. Stafford throws the pick 6 to Kevin Byard. Those 2 combined cost them 20% in win probability. Both of those fall outside of the top 5, but they're pretty close. The first one I think was like number 7, number 8, number 9. It was the pick 6 was number 9 in our most impactful plays. The other one, because it didn't result in the touchdown, doesn't end up as high, but it essentially did result in a touchdown just a play or 2 later. So 20% almost between those 2 combined. And then Sean McVay on the other side, or on the same side, had a questionable call. It didn't make our top 5. It was just outside, I think it's 7. But essentially kind of throwing in the towel at this point. I mean, fourth quarter, a little over 8 minutes left, 4th and goal at the 4. They're down 18 at this point. So, you need a field goal at some point, maybe 3 touchdowns, but you're inside the 5-yard line. You've got to go for that. I mean, a field goal that you may not get that close again to getting a touchdown. At least try and keep yourself in it a little bit better. But he chose to kick the field goal, cost him 3.1%. It doesn't seem like a huge error. Like I said, it's outside our top 5. If this game had been closer, it would have been a lot more. But at the same time, kicking the field goal, and they gave them about 13%. So that's a pretty big relative drop in win probability by choosing to kick the field goal there instead of going for it. Like I said, kind of essentially just giving up on that, saying, let's just take the field goal. There really was no shot after that, when the Titans got the ball of them winning it. There were a couple bad calls, or at least one of those roughing the passers that could have gotten the Rams the ball back, maybe made things interesting around, I think it was 5 minutes left, but another one of those just terrible calls it seems like we see every week.
Yes, Aaron Donald basically pushed Ryan Tannehill lightly in the back, and they called a roughing the passer on it. And I don't understand. It's one of the worst calls I've ever seen.
Yeah. Who knows what would have happened after that, but still, it would have. I think that was on a 3rd and long. He had just kind of thrown the ball away. Would have forced pretty much a 99% of the time they're going to punt there, especially the Titans. It was a long 4th down. So unfortunate that we have to see that each and every week, it seems.
The Titans continue to be the team that confounds DVOA. They rose from 20th to 14th with this win, but you're talking about a team here that has been outgained by its opponents. And they're only +1 in the turnover margin for the season. So that does not normally turn into a 7-2 record. And what's crazy is they've had the hardest schedule in the league. So without the opponent adjustments, they would be even lower in DVOA. And they have the easiest remaining schedule in the league. So even though DVOA doesn't think they're very good, the fact that they're 7-2 with an easy remaining schedule gives them a clear inside track to the number 1 seed and the 1st round bye.
Is there 2.5 games ahead of Indy as well?
Oh, well, they've got the Division 1. Yeah, because
the division's pretty much locked up, it seems, like you said, with the easy schedule remaining. 1st round bye. I mean, we'll see.
It's probably theirs, but this is just, I mean, the fact is there's never been a team that was this low in DVOA at this point in the season that won a Super Bowl, except maybe like the 2007 Giants, which is, of course, one of the greatest upsets of all time. So, and the fact is it's very rare for a team to be 7-2 while being outgained by its opponents.
Yeah.
So they've won the division, but the big story now is whether or not they get the number 1 seed. And the fact that their schedule is so easy going forward makes it a lot easier for them.
They got some help too with Buffalo going down. Oh, they have the tiebreaker over Buffalo anyway, but still that helps them quite a bit.
Well, because it makes it more likely that they'll tie Buffalo.
Yeah.
And then that they have the tiebreaker. Before we get to our next highlighted game, just to remind you all, FO Plus is now 99 cents a week for annual subscriptions. Access this offer through this show description or go to footballoutsiders.com/subscribe. A lot of close games this week. Close games are really essentially ties in this advanced stats. Falcons and Saints. You have some thoughts there about the big play to Cordarrelle Patterson at the end of the game.
Yeah, really been a revelation for the Falcons this year. Big NFC South showdown. Really wasn't a ton in terms of impactful plays, coaching decisions. The Saints, kind of went for it when they had to, coming down late in the game. But the big play here came from Matt Ryan, the Falcons. You mentioned Cordarrelle Patterson. Right after the Saints took the lead to go up, I think 25-24. Only a minute left. Falcons had 1st and 10 at their own 25. Matt Ryan hits Cordarrelle Patterson deep down the right side. Almost goes out of bounds, is able to stay in and get all the way down to the Saints' 11-yard line. That was good for a 50.9% increase in pre-snap win probability from play to play. It was the most impactful play of the week. Essentially set up, the chance for the Falcons to run the clock out. I think the Saints only had 1 timeout, so the Falcons could take it all the way down. With a Younghoe game-winning field goal on the horizon, that's exactly what happened. And the Falcons pulled the upset there. So I imagine the Saints probably had the higher DVOA on this one, but how did that one shake out?
The Saints did have the higher DVOA on this one, even though the Falcons actually gained more yards per play, 6.4 to 5.4. But the Saints had the higher success rate. And the Falcons had a little bit of fumble luck. They recovered all 3 of the fumbles in this game. They recovered 2 of their own fumbles and 1 fumble by the Saints. So Cordarrelle Patterson's been very interesting this year. He's been really good as a receiver, not as good as a runner. But the problem with Patterson was always that he couldn't run a full route tree. Mm-hmm. And, props to the Falcons for figuring out what he can do and letting him do that. He runs lots of go routes.
Yeah, and we were talking about on our podcast here earlier that I was on with Scott that it seemed like every release from a fantasy perspective, that was the name you would hear for 3 or 4 straight years, like the sleeper, Cordarrelle Patterson. He's a big sleeper, going to have a big year, and was never able to put it together. And then here we are, 8 years later, and and he's having the best year of his career and really helping the Falcons out a ton. I didn't even realize they were at 500. We've kind of come on in contention, maybe for a wild card. I think I looked, FO had them around 5-6% to make the playoffs total, but more than what I would have expected after the first few weeks.
Yeah, they're pretty low at DVOA, despite being 4-4. They're 31st. So a lot of that is from week 1 when they got keel-hauled by the Philadelphia Eagles. But I don't think the Falcons are a particularly good team, but they have snuck their way to 4-4 because essentially all the close games that they lost in 2020, they're winning in 2021. It's not like they're a better team. They're just having much better luck.
Yeah, most of their wins, aside from the one this weekend, I think the other 3 were against like bottom 5 DVOA teams. Like when I was doing the matchup preview for their game with either the Dolphins, the Jets, whoever it was, Panthers, they played, I think last week, 2 weeks ago, they were all against bottom barrel teams. But, the Saints without Drew Brees or without Jameis Winston, hurts a little bit, but still against a good defense, very good defense. So impressive.
The Ravens and the Vikings. Ravens winning in overtime, an exciting game. Vikings led most of the game until the fourth quarter when Lamar Jackson led 2 scoring drives that gave the Ravens a 31-24 lead. And then Kirk Cousins responded with a touchdown pass to Adam Thielen to set up overtime, because the Vikings are the Vikings and they are always going to play close games, whether they win or lose. And more often they seem to lose, but they're the Vikings, so all the games are close. And they intercepted Lamar Jackson in overtime, but then they couldn't move the ball. So Baltimore got the ball back. Let's talk about the Lamar Jackson interception, though, because that was a huge play.
Yeah, they almost let it get away. They were able to overcome it, but opening possession of overtime, 6:47 left. They're driving down, taking up almost, quite at least 3 minutes at this point. They're down to the Minnesota 33. So a makeable field goal, especially for Justin Tucker at that point, even looking at 51 yards, it's really, really kind of a piece of cake for him. And pass, Anthony Barr makes a great play, kind of just sticks his hand up, tips it, ball comes down, catches it, able to get the interception. It was the second most impactful play of the week. It cost the Vikings or the Ravens 38.5% win probability. So fortunately for Baltimore, the Vikings couldn't really do anything with that. They'd get the ball back, and Justin Tucker is now 17-0 on field goals in the last 4 minutes, or in the last minute of fourth quarter and overtime. I think I saw he did have the extra point miss against New Orleans back a few years ago. But this game, kind of the opposite, not really the opposite, but the Saints had the big comeback but weren't able to win at Baltimore. They were as low as 9.9%, just under 10% after Lamar threw the interception in the second quarter. They were able to get it to a 7-point game at halftime. They were up to 26. They still weren't favorites to win. Minnesota got the ball in the second half, ran the kickoff back, taking them down to 13. But then Harbaugh kind of did what he does, and a couple fourth and short in his own territory, went for it, which we obviously agreed with in those situations. One was from his own 27, which was a little surprising maybe to people outside of kind of our, what we do. 4th and 1 at their own 27. They were only down 7. There was still 2 or 3 minutes left in the third quarter. I think it was 2:20. And he chose to go for it, which from him and some of those guys, like him, even Zach Taylor this year has had a couple of those, Brandon Staley. No really shock for us, maybe people just based on the time left, but went for it. And then, from there, they converted a few of those, converted a big 3rd and 15, I think was like a 12% increase. Gave up the touchdown late, but were able to win it in overtime, overcoming that interception. The defense stepped up to get the ball back for Justin Tucker.
Yeah, it was a really kind of an interesting game because the Vikings actually outgained the Ravens, and they had the big special teams plays, which you don't often get against the Ravens. But there was a huge gap in success rate, 56% for the Baltimore offense and only 39% for the Minnesota offense. The Minnesota offense was really boom and bust, whereas Baltimore really, moved the ball pretty steadily, but also had the 2 turnovers.
Yeah, it seemed Minnesota started off pretty hot early. I think it was 14-0, 14-3, whatever, in the first quarter early into the game, and then kind of seemed like they stalled the rest of the game, say Kirk Cousins, and then really couldn't get much going the rest of the game until, they were able to tie it up. At least it didn't come down to another field goal for the Vikings. They didn't have to kick it. It ended up being the Ravens, but yeah, like you said, close game. It seems like every single week, every single year, it seems like the Vikings are involved in just these close games, heartbreaking losses. 2 weeks in a row now that they kind of blew it.
Another close one was Chargers over Eagles, and this one came down to the play calling of head coach Brandon Staley, who's been aggressive on fourth downs all year. The final drive of the game for the Chargers led to our top 2 best coaching decisions of the week. Let's talk about them.
Yeah, 4th and 1 at the Philly 39, 2:48 left. Got a chance to kick a field goal to take the lead. It's tied at 24 at this point. But Staley, kind of not really surprising from him based on what we've seen this year, but kind of surprising in the fact that he's a defensive-minded guy. And a lot of times you see some of those guys kind of tend to be more conservative, wanting to trust their defense, but he, has kept his foot on the pedal all year long, goes for it. It was a 19.5% increase in pre-snap win probability. So this comes in at number 2 on the season. Number 1 this week, he's just behind Matt LaFleur against Arizona last week. They pick up the first down, they move, keep going, run down a little bit more time. Philadelphia uses all their timeouts, gets past the 2-minute warning. And then the one that iced the game, neither team has a timeout. 4th and 1 again at the Philly 28 this time, goes for it again, knowing that minute 40, you kick that field goal and go up 3, a minute 40, still a lot of time for especially fourth quarter Jalen Hurts. It seems like they're always putting up some points there and moving the ball down the field. But this situation, he knew that the only way to guarantee that they would have the last chance is to go for it. And they went for it, converted it again, this time Justin Herbert up the middle. This was a 15.7% increase, so nearly 35% between or over 35% between those 2 decisions, an increase in win probability by Brandon Staley. So really just a great showing by him. The end of the game, knowing what it takes to win, and trusting his offense and putting the ball in his best player's hands.
Yep. We love Brandon Staley. I mean, what else is there to say? The guy is amazing when it comes to doing things that analytics says you should do. And he's got his team to 5-4. So quite the wild card race, quite the playoff race in the AFC. And one of the interesting things about yesterday, by the way, the AFC was something like 6-1 against the NFC yesterday.
Wow.
Sort of an unspoken background to what happened in the games yesterday. It was kind of weird, but AFC teams just kept beating up on NFC teams, whether it was an upset like Denver-Dallas or a game that everyone expected to go that way, like the Patriots and the Panthers.
Yep. But the Giants, I think, were the only win over the Raiders. Is that right?
Giants were the only NFC win. Yep, Giants over the Raiders. Yeah. Let's talk about another close game, although this one was less of a it came down to the end, because the Jaguars had a lead over the Bills for quite a while. And you just kept expecting, well, of course the Bills will come back. It's 9-6. They're going to score a touchdown. Of course they're going to come back and score a touchdown. And they couldn't come back and score a touchdown.
Mm-mm. Similar to kind of last week, it's like with the Dolphins, they struggled throughout the whole game. They finally were able to put it together and win by 15 in that one. And I was the same. I was watching.
Be able to put it together.
Yeah, I'm watching this one, just expecting all right, they're going to end up winning by 10 points. Now they're going to put together a couple scoring drives. But no, this one just low-scoring game, no touchdowns in this one. Said the Bills heavy favorites. Urban Meyer had a few good calls in this one. He had one bad one that comes after this one. But first is our 5th best 4th down go of the week. Early in the 4th quarter, he's got 4th and 1 at the 11, the Buffalo 11. Tied at 6, decides to go for it instead of kicking the field goal just to go up 3. So a little surprising, not necessarily because Urban Meyer's been really bad on 4th downs this year. He really hasn't been terrible. He's had some really good decisions going for it. But just looking at the context, I'm thinking as this is happening, they're Buffalo. They have a chance to take a lead against Buffalo. Neither teams look great all day. The defensive battle. Or maybe lack of offensive battle. I didn't see a whole lot of that game, but chose to go for it. Going for the touchdown, at least to extend the drive. It was an 8% increase in win probability prior to the snap, and they converted it. Got 3 yards, ended up having a 4th and goal, and choosing to kick the field goal. It wasn't that big of an error. It's not in our top 5. I think it was maybe around 2%, 1.5%, something like that. But still, this one, choosing to go for it from the 11 was like I said, the 5th best of the week. And then they would go on to hurt the Bills' chances in our third most impactful play of the weekend, which this is something, people may be tired of hearing it now, but Josh Allen on Josh Allen crime. And it's just defensive Josh Allen from University of Kentucky here, our home state here at EdjSports, but putting on a clinic yesterday with an interception of Josh Allen. He sacked Josh Allen, and that's what this one was, the sack, for a loss of 9 yards, taking Buffalo from 3rd and 7 at the Jacksonville 39 to 4th and 16 at the Jacksonville 48, with just over a minute remaining. It was a 28.3% decrease in win probability. Again, our third most impactful play of the week, and that 4th down, ended up sealing the game. They were able to stop them on 4th down and come away with the big time upset. Although that's a game that we didn't say the Jaguars were going to win, obviously, but we at Edge, our model had this as closer to an 8-point game than a 14 or 15-point game that was in the market. So thought this was going to be a lot closer. Did not expect the Jaguars win, but they were able to pull it out.
Yeah, Bills, the most inconsistent team in the league this year. I mean, that wins over Miami and Houston by just colossal amounts, and then 3 losses, including to Jacksonville. Kind of nuts.
Yeah.
I mentioned quickly Denver and Dallas, another loss that no one really saw coming, and a bit of an up and down game for Mike McCarthy. Let's talk a little bit about Mike McCarthy on 4th downs.
Yeah, so he's only going to show up in our top 5s on our worst decisions, which is kind of misleading this week, but it was right at the end of the first quarter, 3 seconds left. It was 4th and 1 on their own 45. They're down 6-0. He chose to punt, cost him 5.6% in pre-snap win probability. Ends up being our top error of the week. Part of that because so many coaches made good decisions that the biggest error at 5.6 really isn't all that bad. It's still an error. But what's interesting here is this was our 3rd possession. Yep. He'd already gone for it twice on 4th down, 4th and 1 at the Denver 38, I think, 4th and 2 at the 20, got stopped.
Failed the first 2 times. So I think this is a little bit of gambler's fallacy where he felt like, or not gambler's fallacy, because that would be that he thought he would make it. It was more like he may have failed the first time and gone, all right, you know what? Without Tyron Smith at left tackle, we're not going to be able to do this. Let's punt. Yeah.
So that one, the first couple were, good decisions. And then after this, later in the game, they were down, I think, 19-0 at this point, 3rd quarter, though. He chose to go for it again from his own 40 on 4th and 1. Kind of a desperation, but still a situation where a lot of times we'd see a coach just punt, kind of get like we saw with McVay choosing to just kick a field goal. Stayed aggressive and kept a minute. So I think those 3 combined were close to 8 or 10% in pre-snap win probability increases. So 3 out of 4 on the day. Overall had a pretty good showing. Just that one is going to stand out as the worst of the week in kind of a down week for errors, which we love to see. We love when those top errors are pretty low because it means coaches are making the right decision more often than not.
Well, it'll be interesting to see where McCarthy lands when we debut the EdjSports coach rankings. So everybody should watch for the EdjSports coach rankings coming on Wednesday with Ian and Katie George. Are you excited to finally debut coach rankings for the year?
Absolutely. I've kind of been getting some sneak peeks each week just to check in on how things are going. We don't debut them. Obviously, we're about halfway through the season, just to get a little bit of a bigger sample size under our belts and get those out. But I've got an idea of who's going to be at the top, and I think some people will be surprised at who's at the top in the critical call index portion, which, as you know, is it's comprised.
I will be shocked if it is anyone other than Brandon Staley.
He will be. I haven't looked today, but I guarantee he will be up, especially with those 2 big decisions helping him. Don't be surprised if a Dan Campbell is up there, not necessarily overall coach rankings, but the CCI that is looking just at 4th down decisions, because he's been kind of mocked and criticized for being too aggressive. But we've agreed with, I think, every 4th down decision he's made. He knows that his team isn't very good, that they have to take every advantage that they can to win, and he's been aggressive, and our models like his decision. So don't be surprised to see some of those guys a little bit higher than you think, and then some of those guys like I don't know, Bill Belichick, Bruce Arians, maybe a little bit lower, as you could probably expect. Some of our viewers might be surprised to see them lower or as low as they are, I would imagine.
Belichick, close to the most conservative coach in the league at this point. Very strange.
We'll see him here coming up in the next few minutes too.
Let's talk about most impactful plays of the week, and we apologize. We don't have our cool graphics that we normally have, but also, if you're watching us live, please feel free to ask questions about any of these plays or any of these games. We covered our top 3 impactful plays already. Tell us about impactful plays 5 and 4.
Yeah, and it looks like we actually do have our graphics up. Thank you,
Oh, we
Philip.
do have our graphics.
Get those.
Yes,
wonderful.
Awesome.
Philip and Eric there. Awesome. So yeah, number 5, Raiders, Giants. This was into the game. 2nd and 10 at the Giants 13. Raiders knocking on the door to score a touchdown to try and tie it with a touchdown, an extra point. Only 44 seconds left, no timeout. So even if they, something happens here, they've got the game's over if they don't get it. Instead of getting 3 shots, I guess they would have had. They had a second shot. Derek Carr sacked, fumbles, and recovered by the Giants for ending the game at that point, dropping them from 24.5 down to 0%. And then number 4, Bengals and Browns. So this was the game, or the opening drive. Bengals are driving down, looking pretty good, moving down the field, running up, coming down on 6 minutes on this drive. 3rd and goal at the Cleveland 3. And then Denzel Ward takes Joe Burrow's pass 99 yards back to the house. As I mentioned, 1 of 4 pick sixes that I saw yesterday. I think there were only 4 yesterday, but there were 4 of them. This was the first one very early in the day.
This was a long one, though. 99-yard pick 6.
Yeah, it was 26.7% increase for Cleveland, drop for Cincinnati. Also, I think I was reading NFL, one of their stats. Cleveland is only the 4th team to have a defensive touchdown, a rush, and passing touchdown of over 60 yards in one game. The last 3 came in 2 and 66, 1 and 67. So pretty cool feat there with Chubb just running away in that game, 170-some yards, I think, and Peoples-Jones kind of becoming a go-to guy for Baker Mayfield the last couple of years. This one was coming in number 4 at 26.7. Number 3 was Bills and Jaguars. We mentioned the Allen sack of Allen cost Buffalo 28.3% in win probability, effectively or almost ending the game, forcing that 4th down there. And then the Ravens, Vikings, we mentioned this one as well. These next 2, the number 2 and number 1 we mentioned, it was the Lamar Jackson interception in overtime by Anthony Barr, was worth 38.5% in win probability. And then the Falcons, Matt Ryan's pass to Cordarrelle Patterson was 50.9, good for the most impactful play of the week, the only positive play for the offense in our top 5 this week.
All right, let's talk about the coaching decisions and the best coaching decisions from this week. Again, we've covered a couple of these already, but let's talk about the top 5 coaching decisions, starting with the Kansas City Chiefs.
Yeah, this one's pretty much a no-brainer. We've kind of covered this one before. Opening drive, the Chiefs just about a 7-point favorite here, I think is what they closed at, going against the Packers without Aaron Rodgers. First drive, 4th and 1 at their own 45, coming up on midfield, and offense like that. It's pretty much a no-brainer to go for it. We see a lot of coaches, though, as we'll get to on our worst decisions, don't make the right decision here. But this was good for a 5.2% increase in pre-snap win probability. They were able to pick up 11 yards, get the first down, and went on to score an early touchdown. The only touchdown for Kansas City in that game. A little bit surprising, but Green Bay defense actually surprised me.
Kansas City's offense is 25th in DVOA over the last 5 weeks.
Yeah, and one thing Scott and I were talking about earlier, I think you had mentioned, and maybe we talked about it last week, was that without turnovers, Kansas City was top 5, maybe. Is that right, going into last week?
Well, they were, but I mean, if you include the first 4 weeks, but not if you only look at the last 5 weeks. No, they're just not.
Gotcha. Yeah, but I was very surprised.
They're like, at first it was like, oh, so many turnovers. But what's happened over the last few games is the offense has completely stagnated, and it has nothing to do with turnovers. There weren't any turnovers in this game.
Yeah, that's what I was saying. Without even being able to generate turnovers, to hold that offense. But you said they just haven't been good, and I think it's you look at teams like the Titans. They have the Bills had the big win over the Chiefs. But I think people, even not looking at the numbers, just assume and kind of credit the Chiefs as still being one of those top teams in the league. I'm not saying that they're not. Talent-wise, I think they still can be one of the best teams, but they haven't performed that way. And it's not as big of a feat to, hold that offense as low or to beat them as it has been in the last couple of years.
Kansas City 18th in DVOA right now.
Wow.
They are 11th on offense, 28th on defense, and number 1 on special teams.
So if they can just get those other two going, then they'll be right back up there. But yeah, he made the right decision. So given the fact that his offense is struggling going against a team in Green Bay that probably wasn't going to be able to get much done, even against a bad defense, and they didn't. Was good for number 5. Number 4 was the Ravens Lamar Jackson run on 4th and 1 at their own 27. This is the one I said, 2:20 left in the third quarter. Still a lot of football left, 17 plus minutes, only down 7. Harbaugh making a great decision here to go for it, increasing their win probability by 5.6. It's about a 25% relative increase. They were at 20% if they punt, up to 26% by going for it. So made the right decision there, was able to pull off the comeback, in part due to some of that aggressive play calling or decision making by John Harbaugh. And then number 3 is another one we covered. Jacksonville tied at 6, 4th and 1 at the Buffalo 11. Urban Meyer goes for it, good for an 8% increase in pre-snap win probability. Number 2 and number 1 are also the ones we just covered. No surprise. Brandon Staley and the Chargers, good for 15.7% and 19.5% increase from the Philly 28 and 39, respectively there. And interestingly, all of our top 5 decisions this week were successful 4th down goes. So they were a lot of times they'll be good decisions, but they don't work out. And in this case, every single team won as well. So they were successful and they went on to win the game.
All right. Don't forget, if you're watching us live on YouTube and Twitch, please don't just subscribe to our videos and channels, but comment during the show. We want questions from you about the games we're talking about. Let's talk about the worst 5 decisions of the week. These we have mostly not gone through yet.
Yeah, I think number 1 is the only one we've talked about, but number 5, Raiders down 4, 4th and 3 at the Giants 7, 9.5 minutes left. Choosing to kick the field goal was cost them 3.6% in win probability. And I forget who it was on Twitter that had used some of our data today and posted, our top 5 errors covering the Raiders, and got some responses of people, saying if they make the field goal there, they only need a field goal to win instead of needing 7. But that's that's assuming that you don't give up another field goal or a touchdown. In this situation, a field goal still brings you within 1. Yes, you can win it with a field goal if you hold them, or you can win it with a touchdown if they score a field goal. But you're at the 7-yard line. I mean, you're that close. You've got it, and you don't even need to score a touchdown. You've got 3 yards to go to get the first down. It's not as big of an error as we might see in other weeks because, it's number 5. It's at 3.6. I mentioned not a ton of errors, but still, based on those teams, it's an error nonetheless to kick the field goal there. And then to make matters worse, Daniel Carlson missed it. Excuse me.
Yeah, that was probably Josh Dubois who mentioned it on Twitter. He uses a lot of our stuff.
Yep, that is right. So moving on to number 4, I mentioned we'll see Bill Belichick here. You mentioned close to the most conservative coach in the league. On his opening drive of the game, 4th and 1 at his own 45, just like the Chiefs, he chooses to punt the ball first quarter early. This costs 3.8% in win probability. And I don't think people were too surprised about this, but from what I saw, people were not happy with this decision.
No, at this point, this is just the way it is, and it's just the way it is.
Yep. We'll see if he can change, but as I
feel about Belichick the same way that Seattle fans feel about Pete Carroll when it comes to the analytics. He's just not going to go for it. It's just not going to happen.
Absolutely. Yep. And when he does and doesn't get it, that just gives him a little bit more fuel to the fire. Talking Carroll, not necessarily Belichick, but use those as the example of, see, this is why I want to trust my defense, whatever it is. But yeah, it's the numbers show that it's better to go for it, and some guys just won't come around to it. So coming in then at number 3, we have a tie at number 2 at 4.9% win probability decrease. The first one I'll cover is the Texans and Dolphins. Texans are down 17-6. There's 11.5 minutes left in the fourth quarter. This is one we were talking earlier. I didn't think this was even a thing anymore to kick a field goal on 4th and goal from the 1. And I think the reasoning maybe for David Culley is I'm down 11. A field goal gets it to 8, where I get a field goal or a touchdown and two-point conversion ties it.
Right. Well, the problem is that on the next drive, when you need that touchdown, what's the likelihood you're going to make it down to the 1?
Absolutely. You're already at the 1. And that's, also the same thing with the Giants and Raiders I was talking about. That's if you hold them and keep them from scoring. If you kick the field goal there, okay, you're down 8. If they score a field goal, you're back in the same position with less time left. Whereas you go for the touchdown, you go for 2, even if you don't get it, you're down 5, they get a field goal, you can still get a touchdown and 2-point conversion to tie. So this one, really not much of an explanation. I don't know whatever excuse you can make. I don't think it's gonna work. And I mentioned earlier too, this is the same coach who declined a penalty on 3rd down to make it 4th down to punt instead of going for it again on 3rd down. So he's had his share of comments.
Whatever excuse you can make, I don't think it's going to work, is, by the way, the subtitle of the Houston Texans NFL Films Best of 2021 video.
Yeah, there's a lot going on down there. It's been a rough year. Got Tyrod Taylor back. Didn't really seem to help him too much, even against Miami.
Nope, he sucked.
Yeah, that was I think it was you that mentioned DFS play. I did the same thing. And
yep,
did not end up working out. So moving on then to number 2, the one we have here is a tie. Andy Reid on the opposite side. There's a little bit more of an argument, I think, to be made against this one about maybe punting it. It's still, either way you look at it, it's a 4th and 1. It's Kansas City, but they're at their own 29. They're up 7-0, 2.5 minutes left, going against a Green Bay team. The offense, it's not, have really no fear of them at this point with Jordan Love under center. But still, it cost them 5% at 4.9% in free snap win probability. Got lucky. It looked like the returner for Green Bay got blocked, pushed, kind of fell, and the ball glanced off his foot, and Kansas City was able to recover. Only got a field goal out of it. So again, going to your point, that offense just not being very good this year. Something, not sure what's going on there, but 1st and goal at the 10 and able to just get a field goal out of it. But the decision to go for it in the first, or to punt there, was a 4.9% error. And then number 1 was the Mike McCarthy 4th and 1 at his own 45 into the first quarter, was 5.6% decrease in win probability.
All right, let's talk a little bit about Monday Night Football. Don't forget, you can check out all these top 5s every week at the EdjSports.com top 5 editorial section, edjsports.com for the Edge Sports website. All right, Bears and Steelers. Steelers looking to stay even with all the other AFC contenders who beat NFC teams this week. Steelers are favored by 7 right now. Over-under is 39. I actually picked this one over for the ESPN best bets because 39 is a really, really low number. And the Bears defense is nowhere near as good as you think it is. It is 21st in the league in DVOA.
Yeah, we've got this one. We don't really see a ton of value, at least in the spread. Market line last look was 7 in favor of Pittsburgh. Our fair value is right at 7. So really nothing there. If anything, maybe a slight edge in Chicago's favor.
Yeah, this one FO Plus has a slight edge in Chicago's favor.
Yeah, we've got about 2% more outcomes at Chicago losing by 6 or less or winning than Pittsburgh winning by 8 or more. Second most common outcome is Pittsburgh by 7, right, at 4.6%. So really nothing there. We're with you as well on the total. You mentioned market line 39 and a half. We've got it at 44 points. So, still not a lot of scoring, but expect it to go over that low number of 39. It's coming in. The chances of going over 39 points is 65.9%. So almost 2 out of 3 of our simulations have this game going over the market total. The public, everyone is pretty much, or the majority are on Pittsburgh, 63% of the bets, 68% of the money. So really no divergence there at all. So seems like, Pittsburgh to win, we've got them straight up, 72% win probability, almost 3 out of 4. Again, really nothing in the spread, but the over seems to be the better value there for tonight.
The other thing I took for ESPN Best Bets was the Allen Robinson under prop. Allen Robinson has been terrible this year.
What's the yardage on that one?
I think
yardage or reception?
It is 37.5.
Okay. Yeah, he is.
So I've got him in the loser league too this week. So
okay. I did pretty well.
Not a good year for
Allen. I was
Allen
trying
Robinson.
To track everything yesterday, and hoping to can't win anything, obviously, but doing pretty well. I think I'm top 20. I know you're still up there sitting number 1 on the season.
I forgot to change out James Robinson before the Jaguars game, so I'm going to pull penalty. And Jeremy McNichols got 7 carries, so he's 1 carry away from but I got a penalty for him too. So kind of a bummer. All right. Thank you, everybody, for joining us for our big Monday live stream. Don't forget, we are here every weekday, 1 p.m. Eastern, 10 a.m. Pacific, 11 Mountain, streaming on YouTube, Twitch, Twitter, and Facebook. Thanks to Todd Singer, Hitchhiker's Pie, everybody who comments throughout the show. Don't forget to listen afterwards on the Football Outsiders Podcast Network. Tomorrow, Scott Spratt and Derek Klassen talking about your fantasy waiver wire for Week 10. And don't forget, as I've mentioned a couple times today, FO Plus now on sale, just 99 cents a week for an annual subscription. Limited time offer, getting you all of our stats, fantasy football research information, betting, picks against the spread. Don't miss out. 99 cents a week. footballoutsiders.com/subscribe, or you can click on the link in the description of the show. Ian, thank you so much for joining me as always.
Thanks for having me.
And we'll have Mike Tanier helping you out next Monday, as I'll be on a little mini vacation attending the Kansas City-Las Vegas game. And I'll be back Wednesday, though, so 2 days from now, with Mike Tanier and Vince Verhey to do the Ask Me Anything show. So Scott tomorrow, me, Mike, and Vince on Wednesday. And enjoy Monday Night Football tonight, everybody.